Hello, everyone. This is Chrism, and I'd like to welcome you to this conversation about your Kundalini awakening experiences. Uh, in this conversation, the great marijuana debate continues. Yay. So, here we are. Marijuana here has been legalized. You can have it, you can use it. You can't use it while you drive, which is great, but people do anyway. All right. The big question is marijuana addictive? And yeah, it's addictive. It is mentally and emotionally addictive. Physically, not so much, but because the mental process and the emotional process often, you know, blend into the physical processes, you can say that through the emotional and the mental, the physical is also affected. Now, even though it is an addictive herb or drug, you can still quit it. It's not to the point like, say, alcohol addiction or cigarette nicotine addiction or heroin addiction. It doesn't have the kind of control over you that those substances do, and so really you have to look at it on a scale of addiction. With perhaps those substances being the highest level of addiction, and then of course marijuana falls somewhere below that. But it is still addictive. Anything that changes your emotional and mental uh, frequencies into a positive state where you're feeling good about yourself, you're feeling good about life, you're just having wow, this is really great. Well, you're going to keep coming back to that. And then you're going to keep coming back to that because you're using that as the only way or the easiest way to come into these vibratory states. And that forms an addiction. That means that you're not using your, shall we say, natural abilities to reach those states without having to use an herb or a drug or anything like that. Now, the same thing can be said for psilocybin use, for even ayahuasca. The one thing that I suggest for Kundalini is, you got people using ayahuasca hundreds and hundreds of times. What is that telling you? What it's telling you is that they can't reach those states without using ayahuasca and chacruna. Chacruna is the hallucinogenic part of the ayahuasca tea, jungle tea. So is that addictive? Well, yes, it is addictive if you want to visit those states. Marijuana is addictive if you feel good when you're using it. The minute you start feeling bad when you're using it, you'll stop using it. Which cannot be said for say, cigarettes or alcohol or heroin or some of the other, uh, potions or drugs that are far more addictive. It's like, yes, my dear, this is Ishta here. She wants to join in the conversation. Hi, baby. Right. Thank you, honey. Thank you. Okay. All right. So, dog licks can be addictive. So we need to understand that it's getting to these specific states that develop the addiction. It's the endorphins or any of the brain chemicals that come through uh, that will develop the addiction within you, and the marijuana or whatever the substance is will trigger you by taking you there very easily, just by virtue of inhaling it or eating it, whatever it may be. Now, with regards to the Kundalini, small doses of marijuana have been shown to increase the emotional activation aspect. And don't demean the emotional body. The emotional body is extremely powerful. It is easily as powerful as the mental body or the physical body. And it is the one body that we don't really get trained in conditioning very well. We can hide our feelings, but we still feel the feelings that we're hiding. So this is something to consider. When you smoke a light dose of marijuana, excuse me a moment, certain areas of the brain are stimulated, and that allows for an unlocking of some areas. Now, it doesn't mean that every time you do it, you will unlock. If you're reading a really like a good spiritual book or something of that nature, and then you participate with the marijuana a little bit, that can trigger an activation. It can trigger something. If the Kundalini wants to come through you, it will come through you. And if it's contributing to your need to use an entheogen to get to the Kundalini, well, then it will counsel you. It will guide you into that entheogen use. Ayahuasca is a great example. Marijuana is also a great example. Psilocybin can be a great example, but not as much. It packs, a pretty strong punch when it comes to Kundalini people. So this is something you really want to be very careful with. You don't want to continue to use these things if you've already achieved an activation from it. Okay? You don't need to put the fire out with gasoline. Okay? And actually, you don't even need to put the fire out. You just let the Kundalini begin to guide you from that point. So, I just read that, Shari, so I'll read it for everybody here, too. It's like, personally, she says, I don't like to be stoned now, but I remember having some really good times eons ago. Yes, exactly. I'm not saying, I don't want to take anything away from the gifts of marijuana. Marijuana has some very strong gifts. The positive gifts are, it can restore a person's appetite if they've been taking in the pesticides that MDs use to kill cancer. The hair goes, and then the health goes, and everybody, not only are they fighting the cancer, now they're fighting the pesticide and the cancer. And the marijuana can restore an appetite that allows a person to survive. And a friend of mine just recently went through the whole thing, and because they were allowed to have marijuana, I feel that contributed greatly to the recovery. So there are some very good things about marijuana. Some bad things about marijuana is that heavy marijuana users, when they make a baby, there's a very, very, very strong possibility that child is going to be born with an emotional disability. This has been noticed since the 60s. It hasn't been experimented with scientifically, I don't think, because it's such a long, drawn-out experiment, which they've done before, but I don't know that they've done it with marijuana. But other people have noticed it, and it has come to my attention, certainly from my own observation of people I know making children and having, some of those kids come out to be extremely emotionally inoperative, to the point where they have to take medication because the parents just can't handle it. Okay, that can be directly attributed to extreme marijuana use. And so, there are some goods and there's some bads, but it is not. It's not the same way for everybody. I'm not going to say that happens to every single person, because not everybody out there is making babies. Some people are, some people aren't. So this is something that you want to consider. You could say the same thing about any of the other hallucinogenic drugs, peyote, ayahuasca, acid, psilocybin. These things can be deleterious if they're used too much. Let's take psilocybin, same thing. It puts you in an altered state, and so you laugh a lot, and you're having a great time, and but if you do too much, it can really hurt your crown chakra a lot. So these are things that you really, really want to take a look at. For myself, I counsel purity. Don't be addicted to any outside substance. Go within, find yourself within, find the vibratory places within that surpass anything that an outside plant assistance, can give you. Go within to your grace. Now, like I said earlier, grace can sometimes guide you to unlock its activation within you by virtue of marijuana or ayahuasca or some other type of entheogen. And that's fine. But once that is unlocked, stop using it. Okay? The door is unlocked. You don't need to keep trying to unlock an unlocked door. Unless you're addicted to it. And if you're addicted to it, well, then you need to get rid of that addiction. Marijuana is addictive to the mental and emotional body, and therefore to the physical body as well. And it also opens one up to entity possession, same as psilocybin or any of the other drugs. You've got to be very careful with that, because entities are not easy to get rid of. Okay, alcohol is really bad that way. And that's the major legal one that we have to contend with. Alcohol. Oh, joy. It's just like, oh yeah, I can get that at the corner drugstore or liquor store. So yeah, alcohol is the worst for that. Okay, so let's be aware of our personal purity for Kundalini grace to awaken within. You don't need to shit in your nest in order to stabilize yourself within grace, or to incur grace, or to bring it on. Purity is the key. And what you'll find is that the Kundalini itself is going to detoxify your body. It's going to detoxify your mind. It's going to detoxify your emotions. And in many cases, during that detoxification process, you're going to experience those things that she is forcing you to release. People go through all kinds of Kundalini karma early on in their life, especially as children, because, children have no other option but to experience what they're going to experience. And, if their parents understand what's going on, great, but most of the time they don't. And that's part of the deal, too. I have Mr. Crow here. What do you think, Mr. Crow? Really? Well, he didn't have much to say about that, so. Anyway. So, if you have any questions about this subject, then I welcome it. Congratulations, Susie, for being able to stop that for almost 3 days. Yeah. Shari says, purity, a lofty goal. Yeah, it is a lofty goal, but it isn't necessarily something that isn't going to be done with you anyway. The Kundalini can just as easily, and she does quite often, she will come in and she will purify you whether or not you like it. Whether or not you're in agreement with it, she will do it. She will do that work upon you because she knows how necessary it is. For those of us who are unawakened or who are just starting on this path, you have to understand that Kundalini is dominant. Kundalini is the dominant spiritual force within you. It's not you making all the choices anymore. You understand that? You're not making all the choices anymore when Kundalini is awake or activated and present within your system. It is making choices about you and forcing those choices upon you. The only reason it's forcing the choice. This is because you're not mature enough within the emotional process or even the mental or physical processes to be able to accept the Kundalini the way it's being given. And it knows that you need to accept that, and so it forces your acceptance. Kriyas can be this way too. So if the Kundalini guides you to using marijuana, I think that's okay. But just because she's guided you once to do that doesn't mean that you're being guided to do that for the rest of your life. That's your ego speaking. And because if you've been doing it for a while, you obviously have entities attached to it. The entities are also very supportive of you continuing to use the marijuana, because that allows them a greater level of attachment to your egotism, to that which pleases you, to that which wants to be in control. And Julia Galfi writes, she says, I tried many things, but I just couldn't get addicted to those things. What can be the explanation for that? Well, you weren't being called to be addicted to those things. Same with me. I tried to be addicted to alcohol and cigarettes, and it just did not work for me. I'd come home with a 6-pack of Miller something or other, and I could get 4 bottles of it down, and then just kind of zone out in front of the TV. This was when I was in my early 20s. And didn't work at all. Just made me have to go to the bathroom a lot. Cigarettes, I tried even harder to get addicted to cigarettes. And I would cut the filters off of the Marlboro Reds, if you know what I'm talking about, and smoke those, and just did not work for me. I respect the tobacco consciousness. I do. I respect it. And it has some very good, strong, and healthy uses. But using it as a response to addiction is not an appropriate use. It's not helpful at all. And if any of you are addicted to nicotine, I would suggest that you have a conversation with yourself and your Kundalini about breaking that addiction, because it gets into your lungs and it hurts your breath. And the breath is one of the main forces of focus that the Kundalini can come through. So, with Kundalini in mind, I would suggest that you break that addiction. Let's see. Bridget and Robert Honings write, this discussion resonates with me very deeply. Chrism, the partaking of marijuana was an essential for my neuropathy. I used it for the ability to eat and sleep. Now that it has been over a year of none, I must say purity is my preference. 11 years of no alcohol, caffeine, nor any addiction since my activation. Ah, excellent, excellent. Josh asked me, why were you trying to get addicted? I just wanted to see what everybody, it was more of an exploration for me, but it just wasn't working. Wasn't working at all. And this was my grace saying, no. Explore all you want, but you're not going to explore there. The other thing is caffeine is addictive. Drinking your coffee every morning. And then you get trained by society to have coffee in the morning, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and then you get your 10 o'clock break, and then there's coffee there, and then you get your 12 o'clock lunch, and then there's coffee there, and then you get your 3 o'clock break, and there's coffee there. You see, so on and so forth. And this is the majority of people. Here in the States, people have those breaks. You start work, then you get a 15 to 20 minute break. And then you get a half hour to hour break at lunch. And then you get a 15 to 20 minute break at 3 o'clock. And then 5 o'clock you're off work. This is the typical thing. Core Crystalhenge says, whenever I drink alcohol, after a certain point of ingestion, my consciousness forces me to slow down to the point of almost Tai Chi level. And alcohol starts tasting poisonous, extremely sour. And not sure, it's not going to let me get there. Oh, yeah. Extremely sour and bitter. I couldn't get addicted to the stuff if I wanted to. Uh, for people watching me, they think it's hilarious. Well, there you have it. Uh, uh, Dwayne Stoltzfus asks, he says, do the addictions come as a teaching? Well, yeah, they can come as a teaching, for sure. They can come as a teaching that is allowing you to understand what it is to have self-control, what it is to modify your own behavior without an SSRI, without a life coach, yay, with, without a counselor, without an MD, but by your own bootstraps, as they say here in the States, by your own will, by your own choice of self-discipline. Okay. And purity really is the best place to be. Purification. Sugar is an addiction. Sugar is one of the worst addictions. That white powder, that processed white sugar, is in so many of the items that we consume. It's in ketchup, it can be in mustard, it can be in all these different things that we wouldn't think that it would be in. But it's there. Take yourself off sugar, and you'll feel a huge burst of purification after the withdrawals. And you will get withdrawals when you break away from sugar. Just like you get withdrawals when you break away from caffeine. Just like you get withdrawals when you try to stop smoking marijuana after smoking it for, some time. You get withdrawals. I don't care what people say. Or, the people that are defending marijuana are the heavy users. Their entities are going, no, don't let him say that about marijuana, blah, blah, blah. And they're buying into it. They're buying into it. Oh, it's not addictive. No. It's perfectly healthy. It's legal. Did you know it's legal? So they're hearing that, right? They're hearing that in their head, and it's like, oh boy. So yeah, when you stop smoking marijuana, you go through withdrawals for a certain amount of time, depending on how heavy your usage is, and whether or not it's got its hooks deeply within you. But if you've been using it, say every day for the past 6 months, and then you stop using it, you'll feel the withdrawals. And a lot of these users say, oh no, Chrism, oh my gosh, no, I never feel the withdrawals. So bless them all. But that is definitely a teaching, Dwayne. And thank you. Excellent question. Excellent question. So there you have it. One thing that heavy marijuana use does is it starts to eat away at your positive emotions. Your emotional control begins to go out the window. When the emotional control goes out the window, your relationships start to suffer. Your relationships with your spouse or your partner begin to suffer. And you're not able to hold in levels of anger or rage. And this, it comes out in seriously damaging ways sometimes. People will just let go with their rage and their anger about something that's as insignificant as, putting the cap back on the toothpaste tube. I mean, something really, really, really insignificant will set them off because it eats away at the emotional control. That's what it does. And, the babies, when they're born from the people that have this, they suffer that very same way for the rest of their life. Consider that. Okay. And as I've said, yeah, Sherry writes that quitting these things are easy with the Kundalini, and it is. The Kundalini will definitely step in and help a person who is seriously trying to discontinue use. She will help you discontinue that use. I don't care if it's nicotine or marijuana or alcohol or whatever it may be, sex addiction, sugar addiction, the Kundalini being the Maha force, or the most powerful force, can eradicate that within you. But you've got to show some effort. You've got to come part of the way. People think it's like, oh, Kundalini, help me stop smoking. Okay, where are my cigarettes? So you gotta come part of the way here. You can't just depend, on Kundalini completely. Um, but it will assist you. It will assist you. You know. Anyway, it can help you with your Kundalini. It can. But once that door of the activation is open, you need to close another door. Okay, like I said, you don't need to keep using the key to unlock an unlocked door. Thanks for watching.